right, welcome back to Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. It is so great to see you all, and thank you once again for joining as we just concluded our chat this morning with the Admin Mastermind. It was phenomenal. For those who are joining us for the first time, we always meet Tuesday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. It's free, and it's a wonderful time to collaborate with other leaders and administrators all over this country and Canada. I should always throw that out as a caveat, as we had someone in Canada this morning. For those who are maybe seeing this for the first time and want to join the group, you can always head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind. And like I said, it's every Tuesday morning. And it also comes with a Facebook link, which we'll throw up on the screen later. But with that, Chad, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm pretty inspired and refreshed after a great mastermind, honestly. It was another great kind of organic, needs-based conversation. So it's always a great time when that magic happens on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it was so good that we went over by like 10 minutes.
And we didn't realize it.
You didn't realize it. No, the time goes by quickly, and we have just a phenomenal group of people. And I love how we're getting to the point where, people have different things that they're working through and they just bring to the group. And then it's just like a flood of conversation, both verbally and then in the chat. We had a ton of resources. So Chad, do you want to set up kind of what was the starting point for today?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely started the conversation talking about sort of cell phone use and technology control in schools. And then the conversation really evolved to a larger scale idea of when we put policies in place, how do we get high level adult execution for our teams, right? And I think it went a lot of different places from there, but it kind of went from like, how do we solve this problem? How do we get adult implementation? Well, how do we make sure adult implementation happens when we want it to in any area, whether it's instruction, whether it's improvement, whether it's protocols or policies or what have you. So I think it was a natural progression of, I think, a lot of really kind of hard-hitting administrative issues. But I think they're also really common ones. Like, how do I get my staff to execute the way they need to without losing all of my political capital? So how do I kind of do this process? So I think we can start in any of those places, whether it's, hey, I think there were some really good kind of tech tips here, but I also think there were some really good general, how do we get adults to execute at their highest level and continue to grow, which is our call as administrators.
Yeah. So the first component was based on parent involvement and understanding in regards to cell phone use within the classroom and on campus, because as we know, cell phones are an extremely powerful device, both for good and for bad. And so unfortunately, with our young brains that are having the capacity to do a lot of damage on a personal level, but also, to their family, to their friends, to other people, and a huge distraction, what can we do with our parents? And so I know a lot of things were thrown out as far as programs for, I know like an SRO, a police officer come in, provide, some strategies for them. I know that there were some policies we talked about as far as a district-wide policy in regards to putting them in
bags and everything else.
Bags. But then we also kind of uncovered, and I think maybe this is a good point for you, Chad, is just like the difference in policies throughout the group and how that was affecting the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple ways you can attack, quote unquote, like the cell phone problem. But I also think it's really dangerous to try to attack everything all at once, right? Like this is also a societal and a parental and a kid problem outside of the school, right? Like there's a societal, and I hesitate to just label it as a problem because they exist whether it's a problem or a solution. And I think it depends on that context. So I just want to add that caveat here that I don't want anyone to think that I'm going, cell phones are bad, no one should ever use them, because literally I'm using mine all the time. So I want to be very clear about the idea that, like, I'm not saying that cell phones are inherently bad. And in fact, technology isn't inherently bad. If you look at a subway train from the early 1900s, you would see a bunch of adult males staring at newspapers, similar to the way everyone stares at cell phones today on the bus or on the train or on like the subway or whatever you have it. The level of distraction's always been the same. It's just the ease of distractions become much more engaging for us to use. So like this is human nature to a certain degree. Like we want these distractions to a certain point. So I want to like kind of hedge first, right? Like the societal kind of quote unquote problem versus what we can control in education. And that's really where I would urge most administrators to focus on, because if we try to focus on everything, we're going to end up just spinning our wheels and burning out. And I think you'd probably agree with that, right? We can't fix every student's home life or every student's parent, but we can control what happens in the four walls of our school. So when we get to that level of any decision, we have two other choices to make. Is this going to be a teacher-driven solution, or is it going to be a building level solution? Now, depending on whether how we want it to go, there's a lot of ways to approach that. And in most problems, I'd go see if you can create some classroom level solutions, because that's always a great place to start. But with cell phones and technology specifically, I have found from my own personal experience, as well as just working with schools like we do across the country, Josh, that a school or district level policy when it comes to technology will always work better, right? It will always work better. So having clear expectations for A, are cell phones allowed? That's the first degree. If they are allowed, how they are allowed, and what are the building, hallway, open space, and classroom level policies that you need to put in place to help deal with that. Because some schools will go, no cell phones during the school day. They're in a bag. I don't want to see them. That's a feasible solution. And you could actually make the argument that, hey, look, we're a one-to-one school. They have a Chromebook in front of them all day. They do not need to be connected in any other way, because we as the school are providing the solution for that need. So them having a cell phone does not add anything to that equation except the distraction, correct? So like, you can absolutely make that policy. And I think it could be very effective because you're solving the problem and removing the distraction. The other way to look at it is like, hey, we want to provide zones. We want to provide sort of tech use zones using a stoplight system. You could have red, no phone zones. You could have green, open phone zones. And you could have yellow, requested or guided use zones. And that would mean like a classroom where a teacher goes, you can use your phone for this purpose and you should be only using it for this purpose. Maybe a classroom could go from red to yellow based on teacher discretion, right? So I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, but there's a lot of facets of this work. But I think the biggest takeaway from today's discussion for me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is clarity and communication of what the policy is. And one of our participating members kind of mentioned this, knowing the why behind it, right? And then driving the decision, even if everyone doesn't agree. Because one of the other big things we talked about towards the end was someone has to kind of go, the buck stops here. This is what we're doing. Because if you let the conversation go too long, nothing will ever get done. So you can democratize conversations and decisions in your staff and your team, but at some point someone has to go, okay, I've heard all of what I need to hear. Here's what we're doing. And we're going to reconvene and evaluate that in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. But being very clear about, here's what we're going to do. I need this from everybody. And we will evaluate it again when we come together.
Yeah, I think that was a very common problem. And a lot of frustration was behind that too. I've seen that at the camps level, but also at the district level of like a lot of talking. Maybe it's a lot of people come to the table with committees and never actually pulling the trigger to implement it, both at a campus or a district level.
Right.
And like you said, saying like, someone's got to make a decision. Like it's great to get input. It's great to have kind of a voting system, kind of like a democracy. But at some point, there is a leader, and that person has to make a decision.
And to that point, Josh, I mean, a lot of times it's not going to be like the most popular decision, right? But so one thing we've even said on our own team internally, I was like, and we've been talking about this for a long time, is like, listen, put out the fire, talk about why it started later. And that's been a mindset that I've had even since I've led departments where, listen, we have a problem. We're going to try to put some water on it, on the fire, We don't know if that's going to work. We might need some other implementation or extra water or not enough, like whatever. But like, we're going to start trying to put the fire out. We're going to solve the problem first. And what this does is it changes the mindset to be solution oriented. So, another rule that you can put in place as a leader is if you have a complaint, you have to come with a solution, right? So, like, don't tell me, right? Don't tell me that you're not going to do what's being asked because you don't like it without offering up an alternative to what we can all do as a modification. Otherwise, you need to do the thing you don't want to do and then collect the data to see if it's going to work or not.
Well, and you brought this up too, Chad, is that some folks will complain about not having certain options. And then as a school district or maybe like the Teach Better team builds it for them and provides a variety of options for them. And then they're like, oh, no, 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 I don't want those options. Like
Yeah.
there's always a
Yeah.
complaint.
Like when I'm talking to administrators, one of the most common things I hear is like, let's see what staff thinks. And we
Yep.
want to provide voice and choice. Because when you talk to any staff anywhere in any school, they are going to tell you, we want voice and choice. We want some like professional respect and autonomy, which these are all good things inherently. And we want some control over what we need, what we think is best. And so here's the danger when that pendulum swings too far, though. A lot of people, in my experience, will choose to keep doing what they're doing and not improve based on no data to the benefit of what they're doing. So I've had adults and teachers double down on practices that are by every metric not working in their classroom. And we as administrative leaders need to be okay going, no, you are not going to keep doing what you're doing because it's not working. Period. End of story. And unless you can show me some data or information to the contrary, we need to try something else. And it doesn't need to change everything. We don't need to modify every single aspect, but you need to tell me, what are we going to do a little different today or this week or this semester to fix what's obviously broken? Because education is one of the few fields that I have ever found where we can continue to implement poor practice with very few repercussions. And in no other professional field is that possible. We can even implement non-best practices or poor practices or practices that we know don't work based on every bit of information. And despite knowing that, as professionals, the things will still happen in the classroom. And so I think we need to fix that as a society, but as an educational institution across the country and across the world. We need to be okay going, hey, there's a better way to do heart surgery, so we should do that. There's a better way to treat cancer, so we should do that. Like, we shouldn't be putting leeches on people anymore. And that's essentially what poor instruction's doing in classrooms. There are classrooms right now practicing things that are 150 years old that we do not work, that we
Yep.
know don't work. That is called instructional malpractice. And we need to be better than that. Like, we just do. And now I want to be very clear about something, Josh, because I feel like I might get some hate for this rant that I'm going on right now. There are teachers doing amazing things too. I literally got to spend some time just last week with the Teachers of the Year from Ohio at their convening. And it was such a breath of fresh air seeing the amazing work happening in so many different classrooms. Like, shout out to Teachers of the Year from Ohio, just real quick. But like there's amazing things happening, but like as professionals, I hear this complaint that like we don't get the respect that we deserve. So let's earn that regardless, right? Like, we can't just go, because we're teachers, we demand this. We need to step up to the play and go, when we know better, we're going to do better. And then when we learn better, we're going to execute better. Period. End of story. And as leaders, we need to be okay drawing that line and going, we know that's not working. Let's change something, right?
Yeah, it's the educational bloodletting.
100. Yeah, yeah.
No, there are definitely practices that we know don't work, and there are some that continue to do so. So I think as a leader, that is your role, right? To keep people accountable and to have, those conversations to, as we always say, to get better. So for those who are joining us, we know that you are looking to be better every single week. We love the group that we're with. I know Chad gave a shout out to the Teachers of the Year, but we also have phenomenal administrators that join us each week. So if you're, like I said earlier, joining us for the first time, we'd love for you to have that conversation every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time with us, as we just have just a phenomenal conversation each week. It's very organic. We'd love for you to bring things to the table, but we don't just give support on Tuesday. We also have a growing Facebook group where administrators come and drop things in. Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a question that they're seeking information on. And we love that conversation continues throughout the week, because that's really what this is about support and creating strong relationships. And we absolutely love that. So, Chad, I appreciate you as always, buddy. And man, I can't wait for next week.
I know, man.